Hi, everyone. Hello. So I'm back again. I wanted to this will be my fourth live stream lesson now, um, helping my non-native students to understand what's happening in America, in the news, in current events. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about a few different things, primarily hate groups, hate speech, and this term that's in the news a lot right now, dog whistles. So the thing about this is it's not really current events because this has been happening in America for a long time. But we're all starting to talk about it now, right? The problems with racism in America are leaving the communities that deal with the problems and coming into, not leaving, but it's not only affecting people that deal with racism now. People that have never had to think about it before are starting to think about it. So if you haven't seen my previous 3 lessons, you don't have to have seen them for this one, but I do suggest that you take a look. The first one explains what's happening with the protests and Black Lives Matter. So in this one, I wanted to focus on hate, which is not a fun topic, right? So hate, this word alone, just means extreme dislike, right? I really, really don't like something. I hate it. But when we talk about it in terms of hate groups, hate speech, hate crimes, the meaning goes beyond that. So in this lesson, we'll talk about what a hate group is, what the term dog whistle means. We'll also discuss hate speech and hate crimes, as well as organizations that are fighting hate, called anti-hate or anti-hate organizations. So the prefix can be pronounced anti or anti, means against or opposite of. So anti-hate organizations are against hate. They're fighting hate. Anti-racism means fighting racism, actively working against racism. And anti-fascist means you're against fascism. So if you've heard this term Antifa, all that means is anti-fascist, and that's something for another lesson. So let's look at one anti-hate organization. So this organization is watching for hate groups and doing things to actively fight against them. And it's called Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC. So Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC. So according to information from the SPLC website, which I will link to in the description, America has seen a 55% increase in white nationalist hate groups since 2017, and a 43% increase in so against LGBTQ hate groups in 2019. So to some, white nationalists is really just another way to say white supremacists, which I talked about, I believe, in my second video. LGBTQ is an acronym for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning. So an anti-LGBTQ group is against gay people. A white nationalist group is against basically everyone who's not white and not American. So to put it very simply, there is a growing number of organized groups that their main purpose is their hatred, their hating of others, okay? So if you go to the SPLC website, so the Southern Poverty Law Center website, you can see what they have up is called a hate map. And it shows little dots where all of the hate groups are in each of the states in the USA. And so you can filter the map by what kind of hate group or what type of hate group. And really, I had never looked at it before. The number of different kinds of hate groups all around the country is astounding. I mean, it's so many. It's so crazy. I can't believe it. So let's talk about what is a hate group. Okay, so according to SPLC, they say this: all hate groups have belief or practices that attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics. Okay, so that's a lot of big words. So all hate groups have beliefs or practices, right? So thoughts and actions that attack or malign. The word malign, when used as a verb, means to criticize or say bad things. Okay, so attack or malign an entire class of people, so a whole group of people, typically for their immutable characteristics. Okay, immutable means something that can't be changed. So if you have immutable characteristics, that's something like where you're from, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, right? So being Black is an immutable characteristic. You can't change it. It's not your behavior. It's not what you're choosing to do. So people that hate other people for their things about them that they cannot change are called hate groups, right? These organizations that have these beliefs are called hate groups. So a very simple definition of a hate group is a group of people that hates others because of who they are. So some of the most well-known examples of hate groups are Nazis or neo-Nazis, neo just meaning new, and they focus on hating people of Jewish descent. Then we have the KKK, which stands for Ku Klux Klan, and they focus on hating Black people. But the focus is almost never just one thing, right? Maybe that is their main focus, but they pretty much hate all kinds of different groups. So neo-Nazis are also racist and homophobic and sexist, and the KKK as well. They have all kinds of different hatred beyond what their group's focus is. So the KKK and neo-Nazis are well known, right? A lot of people know them. We know their hate groups. It's very, very obvious. That is the whole point of their groups. It's very clear that they are hate groups. But just like there is very obvious racism, and then, as I talked about in my other videos, more subtle or sneaky kinds of racism, there are hate groups that are not as obvious. So I was looking at the map, the hate map on the SPLC website, and there are groups that I've never heard of. And they have names that don't necessarily sound bad, especially if you don't really know what they are. So I picked one at random to take a look. So, Californians for population stabilization. Okay, so the verb stabilize is usually a positive thing after something's gone wrong. So for example, the economy, right? It's good, it's bad, it's up, it's down. If it stabilizes, that means it's going back to normal. It's staying steady. So if this group wants the California population, right, how many people live in California, to stabilize, right, not go up, not go down, just stay normal, that sounds like maybe it's a good thing. And I looked at their website and it says they want to stabilize the population, so the number of people living in California, to help preserve the environment. Oh, that sounds good, right? They want to keep the environment, right? Keep the trees, keep the health of the planet. So why does SPLC label it as a hate group? Well, underneath what looks like maybe it's a good idea, they're actually an anti-immigration group, meaning they don't want people coming into the US that aren't born here. And not only that, but many of their staff members, so many people that work for this group, are known to be neo-Nazis and white nationalists, or have close friendships with people that are neo-Nazis and white nationalists. So again, I will be linking my sources in the description. If any of this sounds like, it's not real, it is. White nationalism, white supremacy is a huge problem in the US. And people are getting sneakier about it. They're still in positions of power, they're still running organizations, but they're not saying to the world, hey, I'm a Nazi. They're being a little bit sneakier about it, so people might not right away know, which is why we have groups like SPLC to point out these hate groups and keep an eye on them, right? Keep track of them. Okay, so again, that was just one small example of a hate group that's not obvious as a hate group that exists in America. So why am I telling you this? Well, there's this idea going around. Again, I talk a lot about the media, social media, what people are talking about. So there is this idea going around I've seen from usually white people who are very uncomfortable talking about race. And they say, oh, let's just stop talking about race and it will go away. Kind of how I talked in the first video about people saying they're colorblind. Like, if I don't see it, it's not a problem. Well, you can see by the number of hate groups alone, and that's just people who are organized. That's not counting individual racist, hateful people who might be judges or cops or teachers. We have a big problem with racism in America and around the world, and ignoring it is not going to fix it, okay? So this idea that if we just don't look at it, we don't talk about it, that it'll go away is as crazy as expecting cancer to go away if we ignore it, or COVID-19 to go away if we ignore it, because racism really is a cancer. It's a virus. The phrase has been going around. It's on t-shirts now. Racism is a virus, or racism is a virus too. So while there are hate groups, there are anti-hate groups as well. Like I said, they're fighting the hate groups, not fighting, but keeping an eye on them, educating people, having legal court cases against them sometimes. And so there's a lot of positive in that. So I told you about SPLC. Another very famous one is the Anti-Defamation League, ADL. And ADL's mission is to fight hate, similar to SPLC. And I will link to both organizations in the description. So if you want to read more and learn more, you can do that. So let's talk about this term here, dog whistle, or dog whistles. I pluralized it here because there are many. So a whistle, this physical item of a whistle would be something you blow and it makes a whistling sound. So a dog whistle, let me go back to my notes so I don't get too far off track here. Oh, okay. So here's what we're going to do for this. I want you to listen to the term dog whistle in these headlines. All of these were taken from news articles that were posted in the last couple weeks. So listen to these article titles or these news headlines and see if you can kind of take a guess at what this means when we're not talking about a physical whistle. We're talking about it metaphorically. Okay. So from Vanity Fair, Trump's Juneteenth Tulsa rally is the world's least subtle dog whistle. From Mashable, Zuckerberg, right, the owner of Facebook, really said Trump's shooting comment has no history as a dog whistle. Okay. From Newsweek, calling the protests a city problem is a dangerous dog whistle. And last one from the Daily Beast. Zuckerberg to Facebook employees. We're leaving Trump's looting posts up because it's not a dog whistle. Okay, so see if you can kind of guess from the context clues and what we're talking about, what a dog whistle might be. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about it. So we talked about a whistle, literally makes a whistle. A dog whistle, the whistle is so high-pitched that humans cannot hear it, only dogs can hear it, right? It's used for training dogs. So what this term means in the context of race is that these are signals racists send to other racists. That if you're not in those groups, you might not recognize it. You might not see it. You might not understand it. Okay, so a dog whistle are like secret signals that racists send to each other. Hidden messages. So in the case, if we look back, let's look back at the Vanity Fair article. Trump's Juneteenth Tulsa rally is the world's least subtle dog whistle. There's a lot to go in there. I actually want to do a whole other lesson on the what happened in Tulsa with the massacre. I started to write it today, actually, and I realized I just don't know enough to properly explain it. So that's for another day. But this term, the world's least subtle dog whistle. So subtle means like hard to detect, hard to see. So if it's the least subtle, it means it's very obvious. So Vanity Fair thinks Trump's tweet, or Trump's, two different things here. Trump's rally in Tulsa is not at all subtle. It's a very obvious dog whistle. It's a very obvious show of white supremacy, of racism. So that's the rally. There was also a tweet a while ago. And really, honestly, I don't want to talk about this person, but I feel like it needs to be talked about. So he had a tweet a little while back, and part of the tweet said, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." So this is an example of what people are calling a dog whistle, because this phrase, Trump didn't just make it himself. It's been around a while. But so looting is when people are breaking into the stores during the protests and stealing, right? A bunch of people are coming and stealing from the stores. So if you think that the president of the United States said we should basically murder people, start shooting people who are stealing, that's about right. That's about what that means. And worse than that, the phrase has a history dating back to during the civil rights movement in America in the 1960s. So Black communities and other communities were fighting for equality. And this phrase, "when the looting starts, the shooting starts," was used to encourage police brutality. We talked about in the last lesson, police brutality, right? Extreme violence by the police. So this phrase was used to encourage police to violently attack protesters that were fighting for civil rights. So this is what many call an example of a dog whistle, that it seems like it has one meaning on the surface, but there's other meanings and some history that notify other racists that he's a racist. And of course, people are going to fight me on that, and that's fine. Trump, even after all of the controversy and people writing these articles, he kind of walked back that statement, right? He kind of backed up and said, "That's not what I meant." He said he didn't know the history. He said that he wasn't encouraging violence. He just said that's what happens. Oh, when stealing happens, shooting happens. He tried to play innocent. Whether you believe that or not is your opinion. So when we talk about hate groups, we also must talk about hate speech. Okay, so the second one on my list here, hate speech. So hate speech is a term used to describe the things people say that are racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, etc. So it doesn't refer to an individual person hating another person, right? So for example, if you hate someone because they did something bad to you, you may say things that are hateful, but we don't use the term hate speech in this context, right? So hateful words and hate speech have a slightly different meaning. So you can say hateful words to a specific person. That doesn't mean you're using hate speech. Hate speech would be racist speech, sexist things that you say. And if you're watching and you have any questions, I can see the chat, so let me know. If you're watching the playback, leave questions in the comments. So in a similar way, we have this term hate crimes, right? So in the US, we have state laws and then federal laws. So federal laws apply to all of the US, whereas state laws just apply to that state. So sometimes there are different laws than there are federal laws, state laws versus federal laws. So the first federal hate crime laws were signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968. And then those laws were expanded, right, made larger or added to in 2009 and signed into law by President Obama. So if a crime is committed against a person because of who they are, their race, color, religion, sex, national origin, gender, disability, gender identity, or sexual orientation, that crime, right, may qualify as a hate crime. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all of the exact details and uses of hate crimes, but that's just kind of a general idea. So people who oppose hate crime laws will argue things like, isn't murder always a hate crime? And the answer is no, not according to this legal phrase, right? There may be hate involved, like I said, with hateful words on a person-to-person level, but for something to legally be a hate crime, it has to have motivation. It has to be caused because of that person's hatred for the other person because of their race, sexual orientation, etc. The things I said before. So the term applies if someone isn't officially in a hate group. It can be anybody can commit a hate crime. So a very basic example would be if a white man kills a black man because he is black, right? Because the white man hates black people. It doesn't just apply because of the colors of someone's skin. It applies if there's hatred of that person's race, then that might qualify as a hate crime. And so oftentimes we see people fight for something to be classified, right, labeled as a hate crime so that they can get higher punishment for that crime. And again, not a lawyer, so if I misspoke, if you know I made any errors, I'll be glad to listen to that. I just wanted to give you a basic understanding of hate crimes. So that's it for this section of the lesson. I really just want to give you a general idea of these vocabulary words and their deeper meaning so that you can better understand the conversations that are happening right now. I wanted to end on a special note for my students, friends, anyone watching around the world. So I've had students from other countries over the years ask me quite directly, why do Americans hate us? And this question breaks my heart every time. Why do Americans hate us? And this has been students from several different countries. And it leaves me not knowing what to say except that I'm sorry, and it's not all of us. Hateful people sometimes are the loudest. They get the most attention a lot. Hateful words make the news because they're shocking and terrible. And so the news, media, even what we share on social media focuses a lot on hate. I'm guilty of it myself. We share things and we say, I can't believe this person did this thing or said this thing. And so the hate gets a lot of attention. And America does have a deep, deep history of racism, xenophobia, which is hatred of people not from here, right? People from other countries. So basically all of my students, sexism, etc., etc. There is a lot of hate, not just in America, but around the world. And I can't deny that. But I want to end with saying there is a lot of love too. For my part and my friends and family that I'm very close to, we love you. And we are working towards seeing a more loving and equal world for everyone. Because that's the only way things are going to change, is if everybody is equal, not just my people or your people, all people. And in order to do that, we have to fight for those people that are not receiving equality, which is why we say Black Lives Matter. We want a more equal world for everyone, and right now we have focus on helping the Black community. Me Too was focusing on helping women. There's all kinds of causes that are trying to uplift, right, raise up specific groups. So I got a question, what's the meaning of revolution? And that's one of those words, I think, revolution is fighting for a change, like a complete change, not a small change, but a huge change. But right now, I think I would need to do more research to properly explain revolution. So maybe I will save that for a future video. But yeah, thank you for that question. That's a really great question. And I will get back to you on that. So as always, please let me know if you have any additional questions, thoughts, or comments. I really do love to hear from you. And I really will answer you back. So be well and stay safe and do whatever you can to further this conversation. Be anti-racist, which means fight racism, anti-hate, fight hate, show each other some love, and I'll see you next lesson.